Some confusion over former President Donald Trump's position on an amendment on the ballot in Florida that would effectively overturn the state's 6-week abortion ban. He is a Florida resident, and he was asked about this overnight.
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
So the campaign then put out a statement that said Trump has not yet said how he will vote on the ballot initiative in Florida. With me now is former President Trump's running mate, Republican.
Oh my God, look at Vance's expression coming into this. Holy shit, he's grug-pilled, dude. Oh my God.
Vice presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Senator, great to have you with us. You can help us clear this up. How can you vote for more than 6 weeks without voting for the amendment?
Well, I think all the president is saying, and of course he's going to make his own announcement on how he's going to vote on the Florida bill, is that he thinks that there should be more than 6 weeks. And he's been very consistent in that. He says he doesn't like just 6 weeks. He obviously doesn't like late-term abortion. I think like a lot of Americans, the president is sort of somewhere else on this issue. And he's also said that he wants abortion policy to be made by the states themselves individually and not by the national government. I think that's the most important thing here, is that he's, of course, opining on this as a Florida resident. But when it comes to national policy,
it's a rough one, man. It really is. Running the Trump campaign and having to simultaneously navigate the fact that your evangelical base is completely and totally anti-abortion, but also being totally anti-abortion is electorally unviable.
John, President Trump has been extremely consistent that he wants abortion policy to be made by the states. Florida, California, Ohio, they're going to have different approaches. That's okay. What he wants is to focus on eliminating inflation, bringing down the cost of groceries and housing, and closing down that southern border that Kamala Harris opened up. That's where he's focused, and that's where we'll continue to focus for the remainder of the campaign.
He said he was going to vote for more than 6 weeks. So what's your understanding of how he will do that?
How do we thread this? Oh man, it gotta suck to have to answer for Donald Trump's statements, you know?
Well, I think what he's saying is that he doesn't like doing it at just 6 weeks. Obviously, he's going to make his own judgment on how he ultimately votes on the amendment. I think he's probably making an argument about how he feels about the issue. He's not making some proclamation about how he's going to vote on the amendment. And of course, they clarified afterwards that he wasn't making an explicit determination of how he's going to vote or announcing anything. Look, the president, I'm sure, will tell the American people how he's going to vote on it eventually, but he wasn't making an announcement last night.
There was a period in Donald Trump's life where he was not anti-abortion. Then he
What the f are my emails? On your tanky tendency. Hello, I am longtime viewer. I vote Democrat. There's like a misspelling in every word. I'm concerned regarding the use of the term genocide in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian. Oh, great. I don't have to read this anymore. Okay.
Became anti-abortion at one point, suggesting that women should be punished if they have an abortion. Now he's saying he's for more than 6 weeks, but it's not clear how he's going to vote in an amendment in his own state. So that's why I think people are seeking clarity. You can understand that.
Well, John, the Dobbs decision, what it fundamentally did is this goes back to Democratic legislatures and the people, of course, who elect those legislatures. I think the president has said in a post-Roe, a post-Dobbs world, he wants voters to make these decisions. I think it's important to remember, of course, that Kamala Harris has come out for taxpayer-funded abortion.
Sorry, Senator, but he's a voter in this case. The reason it matters, in Florida is he's a voter. Go ahead.
Well, of course it matters what his position is, and I'm sure that he's going to say what his position ultimately is, John. But I do think it's important to say that between Republicans and Democrats...
Why the silence? Because they're calling in from distant locations.
Democrats have talked about trying to defund Christian hospitals that don't do late-term abortions. Donald Trump is trying to preserve some ability for the states to make these decisions. It is a very different approach to a highly contentious issue. I actually think what Donald Trump is trying to do is identify some common ground so that we can focus on the big national questions like why can't Americans afford groceries and housing? That's what we're going to focus on when we win in November.
The former president, announced yesterday that he wants insurers or the government to pay for IVF. How?
We'll get to that.
Well, he's been consistent again in this, John, that he wants people to be able to afford to have families. And it's one of the reasons why we've supported an extended child tax credit that Donald Trump actually got done. He didn't just talk about it, he got it done. He supported a whole host of policies to make it easier for women to choose life, to bring new life into the world. And this is just part and parcel of his broader view that if we want to have more families in this country, and I think all of us do, we have to empower young women and young families to make those choices and to have access to what
Vance avoided the vote to extend those child tax credits. Yeah, the Biden policy.
What they need. You know this, John. I'm sure everybody who's watching has dealt with somebody, a friend or a family member who's struggling with infertility. It's a terrible, terrible problem that a lot of young families suffer in silence. I think all Donald Trump is saying is we want to help those families, make it easier for them to bring new families into the world.
How is he going to pay for it? Is this an expansion of Obamacare? Is this a mandate?
Well, look, I think you have insurance companies that obviously are forced to cover a whole host of services. The president explicitly said that he wants insurers to cover additional fertility treatments. I think it's also
well, then it sounds like you are asking for an expansion of Obamacare.
Important to point out that it's become way too expensive to raise a family in this country, John, thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. A lot of young families feel like they don't have the ability to buy a home to raise a family in. They can't afford groceries if they have additional children. You can't separate the pro-life issue from the fact that it's become way too expensive to afford a family thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, and that's the thing that Donald Trump most wants to change.
How would this work if a state, and you believe that states should have the right to make these decisions, if a state bans IVF, but Donald Trump says he wants to guarantee and or pay for IVF for everyone who wants it, how would that work if a state banned it?
Good question. Really, really wedging J.D. Vance against the evangelicals here.
Well, John, I think it's such a ridiculous hypothetical because Alabama...
How is that a ridiculous hypothetical? The courts are already ruling to ban IVF in some states. What do you like? That's already... it's not a hypothetical.
Which is maybe the most conservative state in the entire union, has actively protected fertility access and fertility treatments. There's no state in the union, whether a right-wing state or a left-wing state, that I think is trying to ban access to fertility treatments. And if Alabama's protecting this stuff, I think it's safe to say the whole country is as well.
So what happened?
Look, I think that what Donald Trump again wants to do is protect access.
Who's to say there's not another court in another state that could decide that IVF should be banned? It happened in Alabama for a minute. You also voted against a measure in the Senate that would have guaranteed access to IVF around the country. So it's possible, right?
Well, two things, John. First of all, yes, a court made that decision in Alabama, and like the next second, the Alabama state legislature fixed that problem and ensured women had access to these fertility treatments. And all that I voted on, John, is for religious liberty. I don't want Christian hospitals or Christian charities to be forced to do something that they don't want to do.
But you just said you just said that you want guaranteed IVF. So you want guaranteed IVF, but you want people to be able to not provide IVF on religious exemption, and you also don't have an answer to what happens if a state bans IVF when you say that you support IVF.
We have multiple Republican measures that support fertility treatment, support IVF, but don't require Christian hospitals or other religious organizations to violate their conscience. I think all of us accept.
I actually think that hospitals should be forced to violate their conscience when violating their conscience means providing health care to people. I kind of think that's what hospitals do a little bit.
That we live in a big country with diversity of opinions. We want women to have access to this needed medical treatment. We also want to make sure that Christian organizations can live their conscience. I don't think there's any tension there or any conflict. And fundamentally, it's Democrats who are trying to force people to do things against their will. That is a way to inflame this topic instead of solving the problems for young families.
Is it fair to say the details on IVF haven't been worked out yet, how either the government or insurers would be forced to pay for it?
Well, John, of course, all details get worked out in the legislative process, and we're not in the legislative process because we haven't won yet. But I think that President Trump, again, just believes that we wanted women to have access to these fertility treatments. He wants to make it more accessible, more affordable for more families, because we believe in the Republican Party, and Donald Trump believes American families are the foundation of our country. They're the best thing about living in this great country. You have a lot of young women today who say they'd like to have more children, but for some reason, health or financial, they're they're not able to. We want to try to solve that problem.
And the women who don't want to have children. Curious.
Vice President Harris, in her interview with CNN last night, said she would put a Republican in the cabinet. Do you and Donald Trump commit to putting a Democrat in the cabinet if you're elected?
He's really bad at this, holy shit. Yeah, but I think if anything else, this is another point of argument towards the importance of not kowtowing to right-wing narratives and not trying to like appeal to the moderate Republican, because evangelicals who aren't happy with Donald Trump's like pivoting on IVF, they're not going to vote for Kamala Harris. At most, they're just not going to vote, right? You always have more success by energizing the people you can reach rather than compromising on your positions and policies to appeal to people who aren't going to vote for you anyway. There's nothing Kamala Harris can do to win the evangelical demographic, but there is something Trump can do to lose it, not to Kamala Harris, but to indifference. Likewise, you know, if Kamala Harris is going to win, it's not going to be because she's brought over a bunch of like moderate Republicans or whatever. It's going to be because she was really, really, really effective at energizing the people who are already leaning in her camp, you know? Exactly. You should be demoralizing the evangelicals, Herzberg, not trying to win them over.
Yeah, of course, Sean. And we've got Democrats who are actively on the team. Tulsi Gabbard, who ran against Kamala Harris in the 2020 Democrat primary, RFK Jr. These guys have all come on board the Donald Trump ticket.
All of these very real. What do you mean ticket? Also, first of all, RFK Jr. was a paid op, and Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, he literally left the party, and Tulsi Gabbard's been a Fox News correspondent for years now.
And why have they done that, John? Because our party is the party of common sense. We don't agree on everything. We may disagree about tax policy or environmental policy, but we think we should have a closed border. We think American families should be able to afford housing and food, and we want calm and peace all over the world, not the world in constant conflict that Kamala Harris has delivered. So we've got a great big ticket with Democrats, Republicans, and independents on the Donald Trump team, and we're going to keep on running that way, and then we're going to govern that way when we win.
You cited Robert Kennedy Jr. What role could you see him playing in a Trump administration? What cabinet position?
Well, I don't want to commit Bobby to anything, but look, he's a very, very smart guy.
You said he's on the ticket.
Got a lot of interesting ideas about why do we have an obesity epidemic in our country? What is going on with our food system? How can we better ensure that Americans are living healthy lives? So I hope that Bobby plays some role in answering some of the big questions, and we'll see what that looks like. Of course, he's joined the transition team where I serve as the
answering some of the big questions. It's classic conspiracy talk. No specific ideas or solutions, just asking questions, you know?
Honorary chair. We're going to work with everybody. Again, we don't have to agree on every issue, John, but what I love about President Trump's campaign is that we're talking to everybody, we're going everywhere, and we're trying to persuade the American people that we can win with this big tent party and we can govern effectively.
Would you trust Robert Kennedy on issues around vaccines? Could you see him involved with health policy that way?
Well, look, again, John, I don't agree with Robert Kennedy. I don't agree with Bobby on everything. I've gotten to know him. I think he's a very smart...
that's like an implicit concession right there. Like, the interviewer didn't even need to say, you know, those insane positions that he has on vaccines. J.D. Vance admitted it by opening by saying he doesn't agree with RFK Jr. and everything.
Guy, but again, while I might not agree with him on everything about vaccines, I do agree with him that something is clearly messed up about our food system because we have a terrible obesity problem. And I certainly agree with him back in 2020 that we should not be masking toddlers and keeping young children out of schools. He was right about that, while a lot of public health experts were wrong. And this is my point, John, is you don't have to agree with
Right, remember masking the toddlers in school, the toddlers that go to school? Remember that? Remember when RFK Jr. said that in his concession speech?
Everybody, but when you're willing to listen to big voices and you're not trying to censor people, but you're trying to have a debate with people, I think it surfaces the best policy and allows the best ideas to rise to the top.
So Vice President Harris in the interview last night says she'd like to see a culture shift, not based on you beating people down, a politics.
Yeah, phenomenal psyop. Thank you, Republican Party. RFK Jr. is stuck on 3 swing state ballots. That's a headache for Trump. He dropped out too late, probably because the original plan was for him to not drop out at all and be a spoiler to the Democrats, but because all he talks about is vaccine conspiracies, he literally doesn't shut the fuck up about it. He never talks about anything else. He just ended up appealing to more right-leaning people. And he was told to drop out by Republicans when he ended up being more of a threat to them, and it was too late. And now North Carolina, Michigan, and Wisconsin, 3 swing states. Let's go, baby.
Where you beat people down, but a politics where you lift people up. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the idea of lifting people up in politics?
Look, I think it's a great idea, John. The problem is that Kamala Harris hasn't governed like that during her 3.5 years as vice president. If she wants to tackle the affordability crisis, if she wants to lift people up and inspire this country, why hasn't she done it for the last 3.5 years? I think most Americans think that we're on the wrong track. I think what Donald Trump really believes is the way to lift people up is to open the country to all voices, to not try to censor people that you disagree with, to have a conversation with somebody rather than try to shut them up. We have to remember,
it is so obvious where JD Vance is from when his go-to answer to questions like this is the standard, like, alt-right 2016 the free marketplace of ideas. Why are you trying to censor people who have questions about Jewish representation in banking? You know, if you allow everyone to discuss and debate the issue, then the greatest ideas will rise to the top. This language is very specific to his age and his exposure, you know? Like, yeah, it's like you can tell he was funded by Peter Thiel. You know? Like that's where this rhetoric comes from.
back in 2019, Kamala Harris wanted to kick Donald Trump off of all social media. We believe in debating and having a conversation with our fellow Americans, agree or disagree. That's how you lift this country up, not by shutting people down,
he keeps deferring
making life
to it.
unaffordable for their families.
You were talking about Donald Trump's social media. Would you describe his posts over the last 48 hours as lifting people up, quoting, reposting QAnon statements, reposting these misogynistic memes about Vice President Harris and Hillary Clinton? That's the kind of open discussion that you think is lifting people up?
Oh, John, I think if you look at Donald Trump's full campaign appearances and, yes, his social media appearances, what you see is two things: a guy with an agenda to lower prices and bring back American prosperity, and a political candidate who isn't stodgy, who likes to have some fun and likes to tell some jokes.
To have some fun. Yeah, it's the locker room talk stuff, man. Fantastic.
I'd much rather have a candidate who's willing to go off script, who's willing to give every interview, and is willing to tell some jokes.
Jesus Christ. I just looked at Donald Trump's Truth Social. His last truth was 11 seconds ago. Man is active. He might beat out Elon. Posting through. Oh, he's a poster. Here's the Trump digital trading cards. Classic. I wonder what specific misogynistic memes he's referring to. Trump derangement syndrome. This is 2 minutes. Do I care that much? I don't.
Jokes. I do think that's how you lift people up. A politics of boring scolds telling people they can't laugh, that is not lifting Americans up. That's how.
Holy shit. It really is just like perma online talking. Literally the left wants to outlaw laughing bit. Like, this just reminds me so much of the kind of shit Sargon of Akkad would say back in the day. You know?
Tear us down.
All right.
He retweeted something about Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris sucking cock to get their jobs. Okay.
Fun and jokes. Last night, after CNN released a small clip of the Harris interview, you on Twitter posted a clip from a Miss Teen USA beauty pageant from 2007, Caitlyn Upton, and you wrote, I have gotten a hold of the full Kamala Harris CNN interview. Now, this thing that surfaced around the internet for a few years, she struggled answering a question back in this beauty pageant. I'm not sure you're aware, in 2015, Caitlyn Upton did an interview in New York Magazine about all the social media attention this clip got, and she said, I definitely went through a period where I was very, very depressed, but I never let anybody see that stuff except for people I could trust. I had some very dark moments where I thought about committing suicide.
Isn't she also a Trump supporter? Yes, wouldn't that be a more salient point to make? Like, hey, this like incredibly stupid woman that you're making fun of by comparing her to Kamala Harris, she's voting for you. That's a supporter of yours.
So when you posted this last night, were you aware that the woman you were posting a picture of had contemplated committing suicide for the attention it received?
No, certainly not, John, and my heart goes out to her, and I hope that she's doing well. Look, I've said a lot of things on camera. I've said a lot of stupid things on camera. Sometimes when you're in the public eye, you make mistakes, and again, I think the best way to deal with it is to laugh at ourselves, laugh at this stuff, and try to have some fun in politics. I posted a meme from 20 years ago, and I think the fact that we're talking about that instead of the fact that American families can't afford groceries or health care, young families can't afford to buy a home to raise their families in, those are the...
Dude, not only that, apparently she signed a deal with Donald Trump's modeling agency in New York City. She was literally a employee of Donald Trump.
Real crisis that we should focus on, and there's nothing that says that we can't tell some jokes along the way while we deal with the very serious business of bringing back our public policy. Politics has gotten way too lame, John, way too...
Oh my God, he's so online. Oh my, dude, you know 100% this guy had like anonymous alt accounts on Twitter where he would Pepe post. He would like, he would do the like Apu posting where he would like, hello friend, good morning friends. And it would be a picture of like him with the you know, like a swastika tattoo watering the flowers as like a little frog, you know? He probably still does. He was following neo-Nazi accounts on his main Twitter, that he hastily unfollowed after he got accepted on the VP ticket, you know? He was following a lot of wacky people. Wasn't there that one guy who said that JD Vance was in, like, group chats where they were, like, weird alt-right group chats or something along those lines? He was in underage Nazi group DMs, yes? Yeah, okay, that tracks.
Boring. You can have some fun while making a good argument to the American people about how you're going to improve their lives.
Okay, I just want to be clear, though. You said you did know. Would you like to apologize to Caitlyn Upton for posting that last night, given what you've now learned?
John, I'm not going to apologize for posting a joke, but I wish the best for Caitlyn. I hope that she's doing well. And again, what I'd say is one bad moment shouldn't define anybody, and the best way to deal with this stuff is to laugh at ourselves.
Last night, Vice President Harris was...
I mean, I don't really give a shit if he doesn't apologize. Like, I've probably made fun of people who have at some point had suicidal thoughts. Obviously, I make fun of a lot of Republicans. Would you like withhold from making fun of Nick Fuentes or like Kanye West or something if there was some big expose on that or whatever? Like, no, I don't think that's necessarily the issue. I just think that I mean, the fact that if she's a Trump supporter or I don't know, evidence of group chats from Know Your Meme. Oh yeah, I saw the screenshot. Yo, Akron Caleb is thirsty. Caleb, it's over. Just practicing my cool kid lingo with the Simps chat, said JD Vance, a, I don't know, 37-year-old man at the time. And future vice president candidate. He's 37. Isn't he 39 now?
Asked about the Middle East and the situation in Israel. She said that she supports Israel's right to defend itself, but she also talked about a two-state solution there. How do you feel about the future possibilities for a two-state solution?
Well, first of all, John, I have to step back here because, you know, Kamala's interview, she said a bunch of things about what she would do. She is the sitting vice president of the United States. If she wants to tackle the affordability crisis or close down the southern border, she should be doing it now. And I think it takes a lot of shamelessness, I should say, to be able to stare at the American people's eyes and say, I'm going to fix your problems now when I've already been in power for 3.5 years. And this Israel issue, John, is a great example of it. She says on the one hand, she wants to empower Israel to defend itself, while on the other hand, minimizing civilian casualties. What? Her government has limited the supply of precision weapons to Israel that would allow them to cut down on civilian...
No, it was just a brief hold on the 2,000-pound bombs that are the opposite of a precision weapon. That's the one thing they held off on for a time was the least precision weapon there is, the 2,000-pound bombs. This is what I mean about pivoting right in Israel. You're never going to be more pro-Israel than the Republican Party because they're okay with genocide and so are their voters.
Casualties and end this war as rapidly as possible. Donald Trump's view is very simple. We want peace.
Supporting Israel is a Hitlerite position, and Donald Trump is Hitler. You're not going to like outdo him on this.
World. We want Israel to destroy Hamas, and we want this war to be over with as soon as possible because that's how you rebuild the Middle Eastern peace process. You don't do it by making it easier for Israelis to kill civilians and harder to minimize civilian casualties, which is what Kamala Harris has been doing.
Senator J.D. Vance, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sticking with us through the technical issues. We'll talk to you again soon.
Cool. No, I don't want to go to CNN. Get me out of here. Get out of here. Oh, man. Phenomenal interview. CNN really hitting the best. Really giving us the best they can. Did Vance just say we shouldn't prevent Israel from killing civilians, or did I just lose? No, of course. That's the official position of the Republican Party. Honestly, it's kind of the official position of the Democratic Party as well, because they say we think that Israel should, be responsible in its handling of civilian casualties, but they don't actually threaten to do anything, so it's kind of just rhetoric. It doesn't reflect on, any actual change in policy. We really are just the baddies. Oh, speak for yourself, okay? No, it blows out the camera, Sailor of Lemons. I'm a baddie. We're all baddies. I'll think she'll be tougher towards Netanyahu as president. I mean, maybe. The problem is it's the same as the immigration issue. You can't pivot on a dime. The Democrats have done so much to normalize the wrong positions on Israel, on immigration, that they can't just turn around on it. They've normalized the wrong positions in people's minds. Now immigration bad. So there's no way to turn to better policy. Americans will only support better policy if you give them better ideas. If you give them bad ideas, they won't support good policy. It's not good. It's really not good. So just give them good ideas again. Wouldn't that be nice? I wonder if she's in a tough spot with Netanyahu threatening war with Iran if we decrease weapon support. I say call the bluff. Yeah, they want war anyway. You think, how does that make sense? Giving them less weapons means they'll do more war? Yeah, we should join Iran's side. Unironically, a better shepherd of the Middle East than America or Israel. Yeah, the honeymoon period is over, it seems. Which is to be expected, but, still.